Ahoy there, my children of the Force. Welcome to Star Wars Transmissions Weekly Q&A. I'm your boy Dan, and we got several great questions to break down and dive into this week that I'm excited to discuss with all of you, my younglings. So let's get right into it. We've got, as I mentioned, multiple questions that I'm super excited about. But to start us off, for our first question, Gunman asks, who's your favorite Jedi? I was very pumped when I got this question. I had to think about this a little bit, only because what I decided I wanted to do was go over my favorite Jedi based on various eras in canon. Because if you had asked me this question some time ago, let's say a couple years ago, my answer would have immediately been Yoda. Yoda is my favorite Jedi. He's my sole favorite, one and only homeboy. While I love Yoda, and he's still one of my absolute favorite characters in Star Wars, still one of my favorite Jedi, there are several other Jedi that also have a special place in my heart. Since Yoda has been my favorite since I was a youngling, I'll just mention a couple of things about why I love Yoda so much. So when I was a little kid, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, like I absolutely love those movies. And I remember when Luke met Yoda on Dagobah for the first time, being a little kid, I loved seeing those scenes of Yoda being an absolute goofball before he becomes serious Yoda. That made me instantly fall in love with the character. And then the fact that he's a damn puppet. So I loved Yoda, and then when I got to see him in Return of the Jedi, and he winds up becoming one with the Force, that like crushed me and broke my heart. So Yoda will forever have a special place in my heart. But as I've gotten older, one of the things that sucks as a Yoda fan is realizing, Yoda messed up. Yoda played a big role in the fall of the Jedi Order. So as much as I love Yoda, I have to grapple with that he did play a part in the downfall of the Jedi, which stinks. And I hate admitting it, but it's so true. But either way, I still love Yoda. I love that he talks like a freak. I love that we learned in the High Republic and now in Tales of the Jedi that Yaddle does not talk like a weirdo like Yoda. Yoda talks that way, who knows, just to be a weirdo? I don't know, but I love that he talks like a freak. Makes me appreciate him even more. All right. Since we've got Yoda out of the way, because I've mentioned multiple times, not even in these live streams, but in other videos I've done, that I love Yoda and Yoda's my homeboy. Let's start chronologically. Let's break down who my favorite Jedis are from the High Republic, who my favorite Jedi are from the Republic era, so the prequel era, who are my favorite Jedi from the Age of Empire era, and then we'll talk a little bit about chronologically after that point. So I have not been coy in my love for the High Republic. It's no secret that I absolutely love the High Republic. I can't express enough for you how fun the High Republic has been for me, how fun it's been to dive into these novels, to meet and learn about these characters from this era, to learn about the differences in the Jedi Order during that time period from the prequel era Jedi. It's been great. And there are several characters from the High Republic that I really enjoy. But if I had to pick who my favorite Jedi are going to be from that era, I'm going with Stellan Gios and Elzar Mann. Those are probably my two favorite characters from the High Republic so far. Now, I do not want to spoil the novel The Fallen Star because, man, that novel, I cannot even begin to tell you guys how much I love The Fallen Star. It is a fantastic novel. Probably my favorite canon novel up to this point. It's one of my favorite Star Wars novels just in general, whether that's canon or Legends. It's so freaking good. And I don't want to spoil the novel. I don't want to spoil what happens at the end of it, especially if you have not read The Fallen Star. If you haven't, you need to read that freaking novel. But part of why I love Stellan Gios so much is because of what he winds up doing in The Fallen Star. Never in my life has a book made me cry. I've been reading since high school, middle school. I've been reading books, and never once has a book made me cry. I was straight up crying at the end of The Fallen Star. And again, I don't want to spoil it. I'm not going to tell you why exactly I cried, but I was like crying my eyes out. I was literally like stunned that a book made me cry. I don't know why. Books, I definitely feel the weight of emotions in stories, but I don't know. They don't get me choked up and teary-eyed like movies or shows do. So yeah, when I started crying during the Fallen Star, that was to me like, holy shit, this book is fantastic. The fact that it made me cry just proves how incredible this story is. And again, that's part of the reason why I really like Stellan Gios. Seeing his journey from when we get to first meet him in Light of the Jedi to where we see his story unfolding in The Fallen Star is spectacular. And I love seeing and learning about his relationships with other characters in the Jedi Order, such as Avar Kriss, Elzar Mann, especially those two characters, because Avar Kriss, Elzar Mann, and Stellan Gios, they all kind of came up as Jedi together. They were Padawans around the same time. They became Jedi Knights roughly around the same time. And then Avar Kriss, Stellan Gios, they became members of the Jedi High Council right around the same time-ish. So it's been great to see Stellan's interactions between those two characters that he has a pretty significant relationship with. And yeah, as I mentioned, his story and what plays out in The Fallen Star made me really, really like his character and made him one of my top tier Jedi from the High Republic. Now, another character that I really like from the High Republic, I mentioned already, Elzar Mann. Elzar Mann is a really, really great character. He's another character that I love specifically because our dude is a Jedi Master that kind of bends rules and is depicted as a character with flaws, one that's tempted with the dark side. And we get to see him teetering on that edge of possibly falling to the dark side. And I really like that. I really like getting to see the Jedi depicted as a way that, hey, they're humans just like us, or they're individuals just like us, and they are susceptible to emotions. And I feel like Elzar is a perfect example of that. In Light of the Jedi, we see him use a Jedi mind trick, but during that point in time, during the High Republic, they referred to Jedi mind tricks as mind touch. And it was kind of frowned upon to use, essentially because it was viewed as more of like a dark side Force ability, which shows you the difference between the Jedi Order from the High Republic to the prequel era. Is just that one little example of how during the High Republic using a Jedi mind trick was frowned upon, and it was viewed as a dark side ability, more so as a dark side ability, I should say. And we see Elzar Mann throughout the Light of the Jedi, I believe in what's the second novel? Why am I drawing a blank? It's at the fair, the Valo Fair. The Rising Storm. I believe he uses a mind trick then. And does he use one in the Fallen Star? I can't remember. But either way, they talk about it in the light of, in Light of the Jedi, how using a mind trick is very much frowned upon. We also learn in Light of the Jedi that Avar Kriss and Elzar Mann had a romantic relationship with one another at one point, and it very much seems like Elzar still harbors feelings for her. In the Rising Storm, he has sex with someone, and his story in the Fallen Star is excellent. So he's a Jedi that struggles with adhering to the rules of the Jedi Order at that time, and that's something that I appreciate. That even during the High Republic, when the Jedi are being depicted as not as dogmatic as the Jedi Order during the prequels, we still see a Jedi that is struggling with adhering to the tenets of the Jedi Order. So because of that, that is one of the reasons why I really like Elzar's story. You know, in a lot of Star Wars stories, we kind of get the Jedi depicted as these characters that can do no wrong. They follow the Jedi code without hesitation. And I know obviously there's exceptions to that, but a lot of times they're kind of viewed as these characters that are wholly altruistic, always do the right thing. And so it's nice when we get characters that are depicted as being kind of flawed. They mean well, they're good-hearted individuals, but they do have flaws to them. And I feel like that's Elzar Mann, and that's part of the reason why I like him so much. His character gives us a view of a Jedi that's more human, one that can be flawed at times, and that's something that I do really appreciate about his character and with the High Republic in general. Now, another High Republic character that I would be remiss in not mentioning, although they're not a Jedi, I have to mention them, Ember the Charhound. Ember the Charhound, I was so excited when this character was introduced. And again, I know Ember's not a Jedi, but my boy is a ride or die for the Jedi, especially when it comes to Bell Zettifar, which this is Bell right here. So he's getting lumped in with the Jedi. As someone that has a Greyhound, my Greyhound's name is Butters. As someone with a Greyhound, tell me frickin' Ember doesn't look like a Greyhound. That's a goddamn Star Wars version of a Greyhound. And that makes me so excited when I saw Ember for the first time, and when I was reading about Ember and how they were being described, I was so happy, like smile from ear to ear, because again, I have a Greyhound, and the cult of the Greyhound is a real thing. So yeah, I love Ember. I love anytime Ember is mentioned. He's awesome. So I had to include him in this. Even though Ember's not a Jedi, I'm still lumping him in with the Jedi. Some other characters that I really enjoy. Let's make this a little bit bigger. There's several from the High Republic that I really enjoy. The High Republic has done a great job of providing us with some stellar Jedi. So Avar Kriss, Skier has been a dope character. Bell Zettifar, who we just saw with our boy Ember. Venestra Rowe. Keith Trennis. Did I mention Keith Trennis? Keith Trennis is great. So these are all fantastic characters that have been really fun to dive into and to learn about during the High Republic. Now, let's talk about Jedi from the prequel era, because there's several. So there's three that I'm gonna break down from the prequels. We'll say the Age of Republic to the Age of Empire, Age of Rebellion, that period. So or pre-Order 66, prequel era, to after Order 66. So I got three: Ahsoka Tano, Kanan Jarrus, and Ezra Bridger. Those are three characters that I absolutely love. Starting with Ahsoka, her growth from the start of the Clone Wars, then to Rebels, and now to Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, and eventually the freaking Ahsoka show has been incredible to watch, and has been such a fun journey. It's been so great to see her from the Clone Wars animated movie to the end of the Clone Wars in season 7. Just that growth in that series alone. Seeing her in The Mandalorian, I was at my mother-in-law's house. Was it around Christmas time? I can't remember, but it was right around that time. I feel like it was around Christmas. It was at my in-laws' house, I should say. And Danny Girl and I were watching it, and we both started like freaking out as soon as you saw Ahsoka's white lightsabers ignite. Just losing our minds. What's not to love about Ahsoka? She's a badass lightsaber duelist. She's a powerful Jedi. Her stories have moments that are endearing, joyful, moments that make me want to freaking fist pump. And then there's moments in Ahsoka's story that make me want to cry. I've mentioned this so many times, but the Siege of Mandalore arc in season 7 of the Clone Wars is incredible and just compounds how much I love Ahsoka's character. As I mentioned, her journey from where we see her at the start of the Clone Wars to now after the fall of the Empire has been a joy to watch. And I am so freaking pumped for the Ahsoka series. Like, that series I'm so excited about, and I cannot wait for that show to come out because it sounds like it's going to be awesome. And we know that Ezra Bridger is going to appear in it, which, as I mentioned, he's another character that I absolutely love. So Ahsoka is like one of those characters that I am here for. I'm all about. She's dope. On top of that, Ahsoka in Star Wars Rebels is freaking great. Her story in season 2 of Rebels is fantastic. And the finale of season 2 of Rebels is so good. One of the best moments in Star Wars. And Star Wars Rebels is such a fantastic series. Let me just say that. I love Star Wars Rebels. And that series is always going to have a special place in my heart because that was I believe the first thing that Star Wars thing that Danny Girl and I got to experience together. We started watching Star Wars Rebels. Did I start watching Star Wars Rebels initially, and then she got on board with it, and we started watching it together. I think after season 2 is when we started watching it together because I started crushing it, and then she started watching it with me, and she was like hooked. And by the end of that series, we were like in love with that, in love with Rebels, in love with those characters. So Star Wars Rebels is always going to have a special place in my heart. And Kanan and Ezra's story from the beginning of that series to the end of it is great. At the beginning of Rebels, Ezra is this like annoying, arrogant kid that's basically out for himself. He's kind of a street rat. By the end of that series, he's essentially become a powerful Jedi, one that's willing to sacrifice his life in order to save his friends, which likewise with Kanan is sort of the same thing. Their stories kind of mirror each other. When we first meet Kanan, he's someone that lacks confidence. He doubts himself and his abilities to train Ezra. And not only does Kanan wind up becoming an excellent mentor and Jedi Master for Ezra, but he himself becomes a powerful Jedi. So both character stories in Rebels begins in a somewhat similar fashion, and their journey ends in a somewhat similar way. Both Kanan and Ezra, they sacrifice themselves to save the people that they love, which is just gut-wrenching. The season 4 episode, Jedi Knight, where Kanan sacrifices himself to save the lives of the Ghost Crew, is just like absolutely grueling. Watching that episode, oh my God, I remember watching that episode as it aired and just being like a ball of anxiety. The music in that episode is great. From the start, you know that something's off, something doesn't feel right, how things are going. And then by the end of it, when we learn Kanan dies, like just absolutely grueling. But it just makes me enjoy his character so much to see, again, to see where what type of character he is when we first meet him in the pilot episode to the moment in the Jedi that he becomes when he sacrifices his life for Hera and for the Ghost Crew is just spectacular. I kid you not, both Danny and I were crying like babies when Kanan died. And during the series finale of Rebels too, like just babies crying during those moments, because Rebels is such a spectacular show. It seems to me that some people, especially with Ahsoka coming into the live action shows and now having her own series, that more people have gotten on board with getting down with Rebels. But if you've never watched Rebels before, watch Rebels. It is so great. It's a ton of fun. It's got some spectacular moments in Star Wars. You will not be disappointed. One of the things too that I love about Kanan and Ezra is, especially Kanan, he's proof that the dogmatic approach that the Jedi took during the prequels was just straight up whack and flawed. I've mentioned this multiple times in streams and in these Q&As, just how whack the Jedi were during the prequel era. And Kanan is proof that their ways of operating during that time were just dumb. Kanan loved Hera, but that love never made him turn to the dark side. He loved and cared for each member of the Ghost Crew and was especially close to Ezra, but those attachments that he had with those characters never made him fall to the dark side. In fact, I would argue that his love and attachment to the members of the Ghost Crew made him into a better person and a better Jedi. And I would say the same thing of Ezra. The attachments that they have with their found family, the Ghost Crew, makes them better individuals and better Jedi. And again, is just proof that the way the Jedi operated during the prequels is straight up whack. So yeah, if you have not watched Star Wars Rebels, what the hell are you waiting for, jabroni? Get on that, because it's so good. It's got some of the best moments in Star Wars. It's just fantastic. Now, some other characters. Obi-Wan, I think Obi-Wan has really become a character. I don't want to say he's one of my favorite, but he's become a character that I've really have come to love. One of my close childhood friends, he loved Obi-Wan, and I was never like a big Obi-Wan fan. I thought he was cool, but he was not a character that I was like, yeah, Obi-Wan's my boy. But the Clone Wars, the Obi-Wan series now has definitely made me appreciate Obi-Wan in a more serious way, because he really has become a great Jedi. And I think I know the Obi-Wan series is not for everyone. It's not everyone's jam, but man, there are definitely moments in that show that freaking slap and make me just appreciate not only Obi-Wan as a character, but also Ewan McGregor and him coming back to portray Obi-Wan, because he's great as Obi-Wan. He is like, I know for some people, Alec Guinness is who they visualize as Obi-Wan, but for someone like me that grew up with the prequels, Ewan McGregor is Obi-Wan to me. That's motherfucking Obi-Wan right there. So yeah, not a top tier Jedi, but he's close. He's like right on the cusp for me, and has really become more of a favorite character of mine in recent years. Just not a top tier one, I would say. Another character that I really enjoy, Cal Kestis from Fallen Order. Love Fallen Order. That game is so freaking good. I wouldn't say at this point I'm putting him into one of my top tier Jedi lists, but he's close. Fallen Order is great, and we've got Jedi Survivor coming out, Jedi Battle Scars. Once those drop, that could change my mind on some of the on someone like Cal Kestis. But yeah, Yoda, Elzar Mann, Stellan Gios, Ahsoka Tano, Kanan Jarrus, Ezra Bridger. Those are going to be my top tier Jedi at this point. Love those characters. All right, this image is, I don't know why it looks like this. Let's go back here for a second. All right, let me catch up with the chat quickly before we move on to our next question. All right, so Darth Bane, what's up, my man? Glad to see you're back. I'll say this. When I first started learning about and following Buddhism, Yoda saying, do or do not, there is no try, always stuck with me as a phrase that I would say and kept me focused. I love that quote. I love, too, going back to Star Wars Rebels, there's a moment in Star Wars Rebels where Kanan is training Ezra, and Kanan says, do or do not, there is no try. And Ezra's like, yo, what is that? What the hell does that mean? And Kanan's response was basically, I don't know. I don't know. But I love that quote. And I just love the scenes in The Empire Strikes Back that we get of Yoda training Luke. They're just really spectacular. I'm going to talk about another question that I'm going to answer during the stream. I'm going to mention something from Yoda's training during Luke and some of the things that he tells Luke during that training period. But it's great. It's still, to this day, when I watch that scene, it still gets me super pumped. It makes me feel like a little kid again. And because of those reasons, man, Yoda is always going to be one of my favorites. Sonia, welcome to the chat. Glad you're here. Bull Run, my boy, what's going on? Dazin, Master Fay, best Jedi hands down. Why am I drawing Master Fay? Why am I drawing a blank on Master Fay? Don't know who that is. All right, let's move on to our next question. My man, the Cantina fan, asks, what was your favorite battle in all of Star Wars? Series and movies count. Love these questions asking me what my favorite things in Star Wars are. These are the kinds of questions that I love. I love talking about the things that make me love Star Wars. So there are several battles that I absolutely love in Star Wars. This question was pretty easy for me to come up with answers for. There were 3 battles that immediately came to mind. I'm like, oh yeah, those are hands down my favorite battles in all of Star Wars. So there are 3. Let's break them down. Let's discuss each of them in chronicle order within the canon timeline. So first up, we've got the second Battle of Geonosis, which takes place in 21 BBY. I freaking love this battle. We get to see this battle in season 2 of the Clone Wars animated series, and holy crap, do I love this arc. The battle itself, we see it take place over a 2-episode arc, I believe, but then we see some I think it's 2 more episodes after, where the Jedi and clones are basically infiltrating like a Geonosian hive where there's these like slugs or bugs that are able to reanimate dead Geonosians, and then the clones wind up taking those bugs back on a Republic starship, Star Destroyer. It's such a fun arc, but the battle of Geonosis, the second battle of Geonosis itself, and how it's depicted in that 2-episode arc is just so freaking dope. So, following a covert mission, we see Padme go on a covert mission to the planet Cato Nemoidia. She is able to essentially discover and get proof that Archduke Poggle the Lesser and the Separatists had constructed a series of droid factories on Geonosis. This then led to the Jedi and the Republic to dispatch a large Jedi-led invasion force for the Republic Army to retake the planet and to hopefully hinder the production of more battle droids. Once we see the Republic launch its battle, it is just like straight up freaking mayhem. And I love it because essentially the Jedi are launching this like full-scale planetary invasion of Geonosis, and essentially all hell breaks loose. There are moments during the battle that totally remind me of scenes from like Saving Private Ryan or other brutal depictions of World War II or Vietnam War movies. The fighting sequences, the action sequences, again, just really remind me of war movies, and it makes me just really love those 2 episodes. It's such a spectacular arc. And during the battle, we see a ton of clones and a ton of Geonosians die. And we also see the merciless tactics displayed by both the Grand Army of the Republic and the Jedi, as well as the Separatists. So at one point, Ki-Adi-Mundi orders flame troopers to basically burn Geonosian soldiers alive. Just straight up brutal. Like, think about that. And I understand it's war, right? It's brutal. War in any capacity is brutal. But if you think about it from the standpoint of, hey, the Jedi are supposed to be bastions of peace and justice and bastions of the Force. And then here's Ki-Adi-Mundi ordering clone troopers to frickin' roast Geonosians. It's crazy. I think aside from probably the Battle of Umbara arc, I think the second Battle of Geonosis might be the battle that's depicted the most brutally in the Clone Wars animated series. I think that's probably safe to say. And again, it just makes me really, really like that battle. Another battle that I like is the Battle of Coruscant, which takes place in 19 BBY. And I love that with the season 7 of the Clone Wars, we get to see the Battle of Coruscant starting, but from a different vantage point from what we get in Revenge of the Sith. But to this day, I get chills at the opening of Revenge of the Sith. The film opens and we get this like amazing music from John Williams. It's booming. It feels ominous with no hint at all that there's a battle taking place. Essentially, all you hear is this music. And again, it feels very ominous. We then see Anakin and Obi-Wan. They're flying over a Venator, a Star Destroyer, before we see the insanity of the Siege of Coruscant. And I love that. I love that, again, that music, you have no clue, no inclination at all that a battle is taking place. And then you see Anakin and Obi-Wan just kind of like nosediving right into the heart of the battle. Just, it is so freaking dope. I remember seeing Revenge of the Sith for the first time in theaters and being like, holy crap, I cannot believe this is the opening of the movie. This is just such a great way to start a film. This is an awesome battle that we're getting to see. Like, it's great. We get some really cool dogfighting scenes. Grievous is introduced. We get to meet Grievous, and we get to see Anakin and Grievous slinging verbal barbs at one another, which is great. And Anakin and Obi-Wan's duel with Count Dooku. Dooku freaking losing his chrome dome. So it's just a really great battle. And again, I love the opening alone of having no clue that Obi-Wan and Anakin are about to fly into a battle, that music, and then all of a sudden you just see the mayhem of the battle. Like, if we got none of the other stuff after that, I'd be like, yo, this is so dope. This is great. Just makes me appreciate it. The first clone, I can't remember the name of the guy, the creator of Star Wars Clone Wars, which is the Legends Clone Wars animated series. It came out, I believe, before Revenge of the Sith. I can't remember when it came out. Was it whenever it came out? Can't remember off the top of my head, but we see Grievous in that series. So Grievous technically was introduced, I believe, in Star Wars Clone Wars before Revenge of the Sith came out. And he's definitely a little bit more goated in that series. He's more of a badass in that series. But we also get to see more of the siege of Coruscant and the Battle of Coruscant, which is cool. I hope we can get more of the Battle of Coruscant, whether it's a comic, maybe in another series, in a flashback. I don't know at this point if we'd see it in another series, but a comic, a book, that would be dope, man. I want to know more about what happened during the Battle of Coruscant. Seeing Palpatine allow himself to be captured and seeing what was happening on the ground. Because, yeah, this is just such a dope battle. And again, love that it starts Revenge of the Sith off in such a great way. Now, as the Battle of Coruscant takes place, another battle that I love, I kind of touched on it, at the same time that the Battle of Coruscant is taking place. Oh, here's another image of Battle of Coruscant. Frickin' Siege of Mandalore. I love the Siege of Mandalore. I don't know how many times at this point in my live streams that I've mentioned. I love the Siege of Mandalore. I love this arc of the Clone Wars. This was like Star Wars, like peak Star Wars storytelling. It's so good. Some of the best moments we've gotten in all of Star Wars, and the battle is just freaking great. We see Republic and Mandalorian forces fighting side by side to defeat Maul, his Shadow Collective, Olmec, that grubby son of a bitch. And when the Republic first arrives on Mandalore, we get this awesome fight essentially between Maul's Mandalorian forces versus the Republic and Bo-Katan's forces. And I love when you just see these Mandalorians in their jetpacks. They're launching frickin' rockets at one another. They're fighting. It is just so cool. And even like there are points where you see Mandalorians kind of like going through these open gunships. It's such a freaking good battle. It is so dope. This is another moment Danielle and I were watching this together, and we were just like, fist pumping, like so pumped during this moment and this episode. It was so much fun, and getting to see it depicted how it is was great. Aside from that, we get to see Ahsoka like freaking nosediving from a gunship down to the ground of Mandalore. And I love that as she's going, she's flying from one gunship to another. She's just like murking Mandalorians left and right, slicing their jetpacks like it's nothing. And then she lands on the ground. There's a freaking gunship, or maybe it's a jetpack that like explodes behind her. It's so dope. That alone, that's a perfect example of why, bro, let's see Mace Windu survive. I'm just saying, if Ahsoka could drop from a gunship and land on the ground perfectly fine, I think Mace Windu can survive getting shot out of, I should say, force lightninged out of that frickin' Palpatine's office. But that's topic for another day. Either way, Siege of Mandalore and the opening moments of the battle are just frickin' dope. And not too long after that, we get one of the best duels in all of Star Wars. Not gonna beat Anakin and Obi-Wan, but man, dude, this duel is so dope. So we get to see Maul and Ahsoka fight one another, and I love the build up too. Not their duel is dope, but even just the build up of Ahsoka and Maul speaking to one another, and Maul explaining how Sidious orchestrated everything and how Anakin was the one that he wanted to become his new Sith apprentice, and Ahsoka not believing Maul, and Ahsoka potentially like possibly becoming Maul's apprentice for a hot second. And then their duel, oh, it's just so freaking good. I can't even tell you how many times I've just like, I'm maybe not even watched the entire episode, just this duel alone. But yeah, this arc, I've watched it a ton of times. I know Danielle has watched it multiple times as well on her own. It's just fantastic. Again, this is like peak Star Wars storytelling for me. And masterclass of storytelling. Not even just for an animated series, just in general, is freaking great. And I love it. So yeah, the Siege of Mandalore is so goddamn good. It is baller as hell. All right, we got one more battle I want to discuss. And this battle is freaking great. The Battle of Jakku, which takes place in 5 ABY. A lot of people think that Return of the Jedi is the end of the Empire. Oh no, my friends. The Battle of Jakku basically ends the Empire and the Galactic Civil War and leads to, is it the Galactic Concordance? Is that what the name of the treaty? I believe it's called the Galactic Concordance that was signed in 5 ABY. I believe that's what it's called. But the Battle of Jakku is so dope. Reading the scenes of this battle in Aftermath Empire's End for the first time, along with then getting to experience it in the Star Wars Battlefront 2, is just excellent. The battle is so intense because essentially the Empire is fighting for their lives and they're hanging by a thread while the Republic is fighting to finally crush the Empire once and for all. It's so good. I really enjoyed the Aftermath trilogy. That book trilogy is a ton of fun. And if you haven't read it before, I would highly recommend it. A lot of really cool nuggets in there. And the Battle of Jakku alone makes that trilogy worth reading. There's an insane space battle that takes place, but there's also this intense fighting on the ground of Jakku. And we even learn about, hey, how Sidious had orchestrated his contingency plan in the event of his death, or if he were to die, and what the Empire was to do, and how the framework for the First Order was built following Sidious's death and following that year after his death. It's really cool. I really, really enjoy it. And the Battle of Jakku alone, again, just makes it worth reading. But those are some fun novels that are really enjoyable reads, gave some insight into the state of the galaxy that during that time. There's not a lot of novels that take place during that time. Lost Stars. I think that's one novel I have not read, Lost Stars. I need to read that one. But I think Lost Stars does touch on some moments following Return of the Jedi. I don't know if it goes up to the Battle of Jakku or not. But yeah, there's not a ton of stories that take place around 5 ABY. So it's cool to get to see, the state of the galaxy, the Empire, and how they're hanging on by a thread. I think, trying to remember, I played Squadrons when it came out. I didn't finish it. I kind of didn't like it. I didn't like the gameplay how the gameplay kind of wasn't my jam, so I didn't finish that game. I believe Squadrons takes place after Revenge of the Jedi, but I don't remember. But yeah, really great story, great series of novels. Love the Battle of Jakku and how it's depicted in Aftermath. So those are going to be my 3 battles that I'm going with. Second Battle of Geonosis, Battle of Coruscant, and then the Battle of Jakku. Those are my 3. The Battle of Exegol is pretty sweet, I have to say. It's ton of fun seeing all those freaking ships come out of hyperspace with Lando, and get to see some ships that are like Easter eggs. We get to see the Ghost make an appearance. I'm trying to remember. There's a bunch of ships. So the Battle of Jakku, or excuse me, of Exegol was one that I thought about putting in there, but I think the other three are probably going to be my pick for my 3 favorite. All right, let's quickly catch up with chat. The chat is popping off, so let me see if I can find. Bull Run, my man. Glad to see you're here. I mentioned that earlier. Battle of Bull Run. I prefer Exegol and Endor. Battle of Endor is good. I did consider the Battle of Endor. As I mentioned, I did consider the Battle of Exegol, but I really like the Battle of Jakku, and again, Battlefront 2 makes me really enjoy it. But Battle of Endor is also going to be a top tier battle, and I could definitely understand if that's one of your favorites. Alex Slusher, wait, what? There's Star Wars movies after Return of the Jedi? Dog, get that shit out of here. I'm so not a fan of people saying Star Wars after Return of the Jedi is fan fiction. Totally whack. Totally whack. All right, let's move on. Next question comes from my man Wyatt Tamur. Don't know how to pronounce the last name. All right, what makes Vader's suit painful? This was a question that I very much wanted to talk about and answer, because I see this a lot, especially in some of my videos where I do facts of Darth Vader. I see a lot of people mentioning, oh, Darth Vader's suit caused him pain, or there was things about his suit that were painful. I gotta say, guys, as far as I could tell, there's only one thing in canon that I know of that causes pain to Vader regarding his suit. Only one thing. And that one thing being his helmet. So essentially, when Vader puts on his helmet, it contained these neural needles that would painfully connect with the top of his skull and his spine. Essentially, he put on his helmet, and these needles would stab him in his skull and spine. And this helped unify his body, mind, and armor so that they could form an interconnected unit, aiding him in using his cybernetics, but they also eased the pain that he felt from his injuries. So while these needles did cause him pain initially when he put his helmet on, they did also help ease his pain that he had from the injuries he sustained from his duel with Obi-Wan. Aside from that, I don't know anything else in canon that mentions that his suit specifically caused him pain. I don't even think that was really a thing in Legends. In Legends, there were only 2 things that I could find that mentions Vader's suit might have caused him pain or may have irritated him. So like in canon, Vader's helmet in Legends also stuck needles into his skin. So whether those needles caused him pain, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm inclined to say, like canon, they probably would hurt. I would think, hey, you're putting on a helmet that has a bunch of needles into it, on it, or in it, I should say. It's probably going to hurt when you put that helmet on, I would think. So like canon, that's my thought. Additionally, the synth skin that was given to Vader after his duel with Obi-Wan, it itched incessantly, resulting in his body needing to be periodically cleansed and scrubbed of necrotic flesh. But with that said, the right collarbone of Vader's suit housed a cartridge that injected a synthetic neurotoxin called Cowhunin. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Cowhunin, which was derived from the Cowhun centipede to lessen Vader's perception of pain. That's all I could find, both in canon and legends, regarding Vader's suit inducing pain and, conversely, helping mitigate Vader's pain. From what I can glean, Vader's suit didn't really cause him any additional pain than he already felt physically, emotionally, and mentally. Obviously, the injuries that he sustained from his duel with Obi-Wan, they caused him a severe amount of pain on the reg, right? We know that from Rogue One. We see him having to go into the Bacta tank in his castle. We know those injuries caused him pain, but I don't think we can say that his suit caused him pain, at least definitely not in canon. And again, I don't necessarily think that that was the case in Legends. The idea that Vader's suit constantly caused Vader pain is something that I see a lot. As I mentioned, I see a lot of people mention this. Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe it's mentioned in a Legends novel or comic that I'm not aware of, which could be the case because there are still some Legends novels and some comics I've yet to dabble with. It might just be a misconception that Vader's suit caused him pain, and I often see it being framed that his suit caused him pain, which helped him draw on the dark side. I think it's probably more accurate to say his physical pain from his injuries, his emotional pain, that sort of stuff probably aided in helping him, or in him drawing on the dark side. That would be my thought. Vader, we know, is haunted by Padme's death and what he did to her. And I think the idea that, these mental and emotional scars that Vader has, that anguish that he feels from the death of Padme and from losing her, that would probably far outweigh any kind of physical pain that he may endure following his duel with Obi-Wan, or potentially even any pain that his armor could potentially cause him. But yeah, as far as I could find, both in canon and Legends, the only thing I could really find was in canon, his helmet. It got those needles that jab into his skin when he puts on his helmet. Same in Legends, and then his synth skin in Legends was a constant irritation for him. Those were the only things that I could find. All right, on to our last question. We're sticking with Darth Vader. Wasn't it established, CC Mayhem asks, that Vader never reached his potential after being crippled? This was a question I really wanted to answer, because this is another thing that I see very, very often that is, I believe, a very common misconception when it comes to Vader. This is a point I see people make all the time in the comments of my videos, and that has definitely not been established in canon whatsoever. That Vader was unable to reach his potential in the Force. So nothing in canon up to this point that I can tell says that Vader was unable to reach his potential in the Force due to the severe injuries he sustained after his loss to Obi-Wan and Mustafar. Oftentimes, the argument is that due to the loss of his limbs, Vader's midichlorian count would have dropped, thus diminishing his capabilities in wielding the Force. However, in canon, it's been mentioned that his loss to Obi-Wan and the injuries that he sustained perfected his spirit, thus strengthening his connection to the Force. So yeah, he sustained these severe injuries, but as a result of those injuries, essentially what that means is his anger, his hate boiled so hot that it was able to strengthen his connection to the dark side, which I love. I think that's so dope. In the canon novel Lords of the Sith, which is a really fun book. Let me make this larger. Really cool story. Essentially, Vader and Sidious are marooned, so to speak, on Ryloth, and Sidious is kind of testing Vader to some extent. It's been a hot minute since I read that book, but that book discusses how Vader's injuries and his armor made him stronger than he was as a Jedi. So as I mentioned earlier, right, he's sustained these severe injuries and these burns, but Homeboy was in a constant agony of state, a constant state of agony. In turn, that physical pain, as well as his emotional and mental pain, fed his hate, which fed his strength in the dark side. So Lords of the Sith also mentions that even after these neural needles that we discussed earlier in his helmet, after they stabbed into Vader's flesh, they helped ease Vader's pain from his injuries, but the fire, that rage inside him still burned, that rage never relinquished, and that he never felt more connected to the Force than when his fury burned. Which again, that makes a ton of sense to me, right? Think about it. What is going to, we hear this so often, anger, hate, fear, those are emotions that lead to the dark side. And you hear Sidious talking multiple times about lean into your hate, your anger, your fear to draw on the dark side. So it would make a ton of sense that his anger, Vader's anger, his fear, his malice, that those would allow him to have a stronger connection to the Force, and that rage that burned inside him would allow him to feel a connection to the Force that he never felt before. I think that's so dope. Furthermore, Vader's armor provided him with advantages that it augmented his strength in the Force. So his armor essentially took care of his bodily needs, which freed Vader to focus completely on his relationship of the Force, or relationship with the Force, I should say. So that kind of goes hand in hand in what we were talking about earlier, right? The fact that his armor causing him pain, definitely not necessarily the case. And in fact, his armor allowed him to focus solely on, maybe not solely, but completely on his relationship with the Force. Additionally, his armor instilled fear in people, right? Just looking at his armor is terrifying for folks. And Vader could draw upon that fear that people felt for him, which acted like a wellspring for him to feed his strength in the dark side. It's also stated in canon, I can't remember if it's Lords of the Sith or not, but it's also stated in canon that Vader initially hated his armor, but after living with it for 5 years, he embraced how it isolated him from the rest of the galaxy, allowing him to concentrate on becoming a pure instrument of the dark side and to grow in power. Excuse me. So, yes, our homeboy had injuries. Yes, our homeboy lost limbs, but I don't think we could say at this point that, at least in canon, those injuries affected his ability to reach his potential in his Force powers. And while in canon, Sidious doesn't seem to really care for the rule of two. He seems to be someone that really just doesn't care for it. And he didn't in Legends either. He did seem to appreciate Vader's growth in his strength in the Force, which makes sense. Vader is Sidious's right-hand man and his enforcer. So long as Vader didn't grow or continues to grow in the Force, but not beyond the point that he could overtake Sidious, of course Sidious would want Vader to grow his strength in the Force. That makes sense, right? Sidious needed a strong apprentice to help keep the Sith in charge and to help keep the galaxy in tow and help keep the order within the galaxy. So he needed a strong Vader. He needed Vader to be able to quash any issues that arose throughout the galaxy, to hunt down Jedi. So it would make sense that Sidious would want Vader to grow in strength. And there are even moments when Sidious even seems to be pleased with Vader, that he's conspired behind Sidious's back to kill him, such as in Greg Pak's current Darth Vader comic series. Vader is straight up trying to kill Sidious, and while Sidious wallops his ass, he is pleased with Vader for essentially, even though he kind of flaunts the rule of two and kind of does his own thing, he still kind of is like, all right, you're abiding by the rule of two. You're essentially doing what the Sith are supposed to be doing, and Sidious appreciates that. In Legends, while it was established that Vader lost a significant amount of strength in the Force due to him losing his limbs, he had such an immense amount of power and strength in the Force that it didn't really matter. Legend Sidious even thought that Vader's limitations in the Force were more psychological rather than physical. And even Sidious's master, Darth Plagueis, believed that cybernetics and cyberization didn't negatively impact someone's ability to draw on the Force, which when you think about it, it makes sense, right? I like the idea that Vader's injuries and the loss of his limbs didn't negatively impact his strength in the Force. You know, going back to what I mentioned earlier, the deepest wounds tend to be the ones that cut the most deep tend to be emotional, mental wounds, those scars that linger. And we know Vader has some serious emotional trauma and wounds. And the fact that Vader is constantly plagued by Padme's death seems far more likely to aid in him growing his strength in the Force rather than his loss of limbs diminishing his force abilities and his strength in the Force. Not to mention, why would the loss of limbs limit someone's ability to draw on the Force? Right? I was talking about my homeboy Yoda earlier. Think about what Yoda tells Luke in The Empire Strikes Back about the Force. Life creates the Force and makes it grow. Life, not limbs, are what create the Force and what makes it grow. On top of that, Yoda mentions, I love this line from Yoda, luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. Right? So Yoda is basically saying it's life that is creating the Force that allows the Force to thrive. So why would the loss of limbs diminish one's strength in the Force when they're still alive? There are still beings all around them, right? Not to mention, if losing limbs reduced someone's midichlorian count or their ability to draw on the Force, could you make an argument that Anakin would have been weaker in Revenge of the Sith compared to the Attack of the Clones? Obviously, in Attack of the Clones, he's younger than when we see him in Revenge of the Sith, but our homeboy is missing a limb. So while in Legends, it was established that Vader's loss of limbs and his injuries diminished his strength in the Force, that really hasn't been the case. And to be quite honest with you, I think I'd rather move this down a little. I think I'd rather Vader, because of his injuries and because of the loss of his limbs, would be able to use his hatred and his anger from the loss of his loss to Obi-Wan on Mustafar, that being more of a driving force to him in gaining strength in the Force rather than him losing limbs. I'm not a fan of that. And again, especially in canon, that has not been something that's been established whatsoever. In Legends, yeah, it's been established in Legends that our homeboy lost some strength in the Force because of his loss of limbs, but I don't know. I'm not a fan of that. And I think I prefer the canon version of Vader, that his loss in limbs didn't diminish his strength in the Force, didn't have any negative effects in him being able to grow in strength. To me, I like more so that, like I mentioned earlier from Lords of the Sith. All right, let me pull up that quote. I love it. All right, give me 1 second here. Okay, so all right, I can't find it now, but whatever. So essentially, yeah, I like the canon version much more so. It's dope. Vader's dope. And again, this is a common thing that I see. I don't know. I think it's probably because people try to dunk on canon. And there are definitely folks that kind of take some stuff from Legends, some stuff from canon, mix them up, which is fine. But yeah, in the current canon, his loss of limbs has not diminished his ability to draw on the Force and him to grow in his strengths in the Force. All right. Those were the 4 questions we got for this week that I wanted to dive into. So let's see what y'all be saying in the chat. Alex Slusher. Wow. My favorite Star Wars character is Gina Carano's Cara Dune. So, man, I'm so happy that Gina Carano is not going to continue in Star Wars. I remember Danny Girl was totally in disagreement about this. Gina Carano sucked in Star Wars. She's a straight up bad actress, and she totally, I felt, negatively impacted those episodes that she's in The Mandalorian. So I'm glad she's not coming back. Plus, she sucks as a person. So goodbye, Gina Carano. Wish you never joined Star Wars universe. You suck. Let's see. Darth Vader really did feel like a bad. I don't know what you're talking about there, so we're gonna skip that. Darth Bane, Ahsoka popping off, destroying everything on a skydive at the beginning was so good. So I'm assuming that's in reference to our homegirl in the Siege of Mandalore. Yeah, so dope. Really enjoyed that as well. And Bull Run, Travastri's Clone Wars. Is that right? I can never remember that dude's name. I always have to Google it because I can never remember it. I hope it's right, and I hope I pronounced his name right. But all right, I think, guys, it's a good place to end it. These are some really fun questions. Even though we got the holidays coming up, I got off of work next week in between Christmas and New Year's, and I'm so excited to lounge around and just basically be a crumb bum. I'm going to do pretty much nothing but like play video games, watch some shows, watch some movies. I'm going to straight up be living like a crumb bum next week, and I cannot freaking wait. I haven't been able to stream Fallen Order. I was doing probably like 3 or 4 weeks in a row streaming gameplay of Fallen Order. I 100% will be next week, because like I said, I'm going to have nothing to do basically but play video games, and I'm so pumped. So going to have another live stream Q&A next Wednesday. Planning on doing a Fallen Order live stream probably sometime between Tuesday and Friday of next week, depending upon which day I feel like rocking some Fallen Order. I mentioned this last week. I haven't been doing Fallen Order live streams because I've been spending so much time playing freaking Cyberpunk 2077. It's been so fun, and I've been not wanting to put that game down. And at some point, I'll finish it, and I'll get back to playing Fallen Order on the reg, and then we'll have Jedi Survivor. But yeah, next week we'll do another Q&A on Wednesday, same time, 7:30, and then sometime between, let's say, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, one of those days, we'll do a Fallen Order live stream. Now's a good time, you knuckleheads. If you have not, like this freaking video, let me know down in the comments how much you disagree with some of the stuff I said. If there's anything you agreed with, let me know. If there are any questions you would like me to answer, let me know those questions. Let me know down in the comments. You can let me know. I post in my comments section of the YouTube page. I'll make a post asking for Q&A questions. You could leave those there for me, but this Q&A each week has been a ton of fun, and I've been really enjoying doing them. So they're going to be a mainstay moving forward. And very soon we're going to have the Bad Batch Season 2 drop, which I'm super excited for. If you guys haven't, make sure to subscribe to Star Wars Transmissions. Drop shorts pretty much daily at this point on the reg. And then, as I mentioned, we're doing these live Q&As each week. We're going to be doing breakdowns of Season 2 of the Bad Batch. Once it drops, Danny Girl will probably join me for those. So you'll get my goofy ass and my wife breaking down the Bad Batch and sharing our thoughts on those. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not. But I think that's a good stopping point, my friends. These Q&As have been a ton of fun. I hope you all have an excellent holidays, whatever you celebrate. I'm looking forward to opening Christmas presents. I got a bunch of Star Wars stuff. My in-laws probably are like, this son of a bitch putting toys on his Christmas list. You're goddamn right, I put Star Wars toys on my Christmas list. I can't wait to open up my presents on Christmas. So I hope you all have an awesome holiday, whatever you celebrate. I'm looking forward to it. But with that said, my friends, may the Force be with you, and stay nerdy.